I grew up in Columbia, Missouri. That was many years ago. I've been living in Washington, D.C. for about 7 years now. Actually, I don't have any film background. This is the very first film that I've ever made. The little background that I do have is that I spent some time as an art director at an advertising agency, but I wasn't ever, behind the camera or producing, my own TV spot. So this is the very first film that I've ever made because I just finished graduate school. And so I actually made this film as one of my graduate school classes. Again, I'm really new to film, so I can't say that I have a lot of influences at this point. Just starting out and just getting to know the whole world of filmmaking, specifically of documentary filmmaking. So I'm still very much a student, even though I just finished school. So very much a student of all filmmaking. The hardest part about making this film was really my husband and I working together on it. It's a character-driven piece focused on my husband's story, and it was, surprisingly really hard for us to do it together, because I had to be asking him questions, pushing him to talk about things on camera, and it was really difficult. But it's something that we're really glad that we did, and we're really glad that we got through the process. For a lot of people, there's something really therapeutic about, sharing your story and putting your story together in a linear format or, in a format that goes in a film like this. Thinking about what viewers take away after they watch the film isn't something that I was thinking about when I was making the project. It was actually a very specific assignment in my class. It had to be 8 minutes or less. It had to be a character-driven story. So at that time, I wasn't focused on what people do, when the lights come up. But, at this point, I would at least hope that other people with similar stories, wouldn't learn that they aren't alone in their struggle. And I would hope people that don't have a connection, to military families, living with PTS, I would hope that they would learn more about, one person's particular struggle. But probably more than anything, the film really introduces this idea of soul wounds and the idea of these invisible wounds that a lot of people don't talk about. So I feel like it's an introduction to that idea. So I would hope that people would be thinking about this idea that war can also wound your soul. I'm not sure about a fun fact that would surprise people, but I can say that I'm actually first and foremost an artist, and I started studying filmmaking as part of my Master's of Fine Arts degree in studio art at American University, and I took a couple filmmaking classes. So I've had a long history of being a visual artist, and I'm really new to, video, filmmaking, documentary work. But since I've gotten into it, I've really fallen in love with it, and I think that I'm here to stay, in the filmmaking world. My film Healing Soul Wounds is a short documentary about my husband. He was an Army National Guard veteran, and in the film, I follow him around as he talks about what life is like after war, dealing with things like post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and other invisible wounds. And it's a small little snippet of his journey as he talks about how some of his biggest wounds from war have all been invisible injuries, including things like loss of identity. And he introduces this idea of what a soul wound is. And then he also talks about how he got help with that with a particular organization that he now works for called Reboot Combat Recovery. And so we learn a little bit about his story and a little bit about Reboot and a little bit about this idea of soul wounds.